Hey guys, I'm Ted here to give you another fast fact, and for this fast fact, we're going to look at the election of 1932. Now, the election of 1932 is generally regarded as one of the watershed moments, one of the great watershed moments in American history, because it brought Franklin Roosevelt, a man who will play a very decisive part, a very decisive role, I should say, in the history of the Republic through the mid 20th century, and largely his policies, his actions in office have resonated throughout the years. We have term limits on the presidential office because of Franklin Roosevelt. We also have welfare and Social Security because of Franklin Roosevelt. Now with examining the election of 1932, it was really a major problem, a big dilemma for the sitting president, the incumbent, Herbert Hoover. Hoover had really been doing all that he could to increase government demand, to put people to work, to really use federal muscles to help the quell the then raging Great Depression. But 1932 was a major problem for him because it was an election year and he had to run for re-election. And Franklin Roosevelt came out of nowhere, had this sort of wonder kid. He had been an undersecretary of the Navy during the Wilson administration. He was stricken with polio, and he made a miraculous, really unbelievable political recovery. Recovering from his injury, from his affliction, to become the governor of New York, and from governor of New York, he set his sights on the office of president, and he chose 1932 as the year to really make his bid for the presidency. Now, at every turn, Franklin Roosevelt assailed and confronted Herbert Hoover over not having a balanced budget. It seems kind of funny now, given our current political and economic landscape, but prior to 1930, the government had run on surpluses throughout the 1920s for about for really 10 years straight. The government had run on nothing but surpluses. There was no need for deficit spending. The income brought in through taxes and tariffs were enough to meet the federal government's needs. Hoover, in an effort to overcome the depression, began to incur deficit spending, and it largely worked to help raise the nation out of the depression. But fearing the effect that the effect of not having a balanced budget would have for his electoral future, he raised taxes, which was detrimental to the previous very sensible economic recovery policy that he had in place. Roosevelt took advantage of this. The economy tanked, and Roosevelt now attacked Hoover's policies on a second front. And in all of this, the electorate chose Roosevelt, and one of the great electoral victories, one of the great popular vote and electoral college votes in United States history. Franklin Roosevelt was ushered into office. Now, Roosevelt, for his part, quickly abandoned any promises that he had made, any campaign promises he made about balancing the federal budget. In 1936, at the end of his first term in office, the budget was over 50% higher than it had been at the end of Hoover's term in 1932. Really just sort of saying something to get you in office and then doing just the exact opposite. But we'll end there. That's my quick fast fact on the election of 1932. Watershed moment. The end of Herbert Hoover's political career, really his any aspect of a career for Herbert Hoover, and the beginning of the rise of Franklin Roosevelt's star in the Republic. As always, hit like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know what you thought about this fast fact.